King Charles II of England granted a group of proprietors, one being Sir Walter Raleigh, land to explore on an expedition to a new world. They arrived in Roanoke, an island off of North Carolina.
Our people were nomadic hunters who roamed the area between 10,000 and 12,000 years ago. Agriculture was a huge part of our lives. We had structure, we had civilization, we had our own government. We built large towns and earthen platforms that supported our temples. Later, many tribes, including mine, the Cherokee tribe, came. Colonists landed in Roanoke, seasick and tired from their journey on their ships. They set up their establishments in marshes infested with mosquitoes and diseases. The land was unable to produce food for them to harvest upon, therefore causing famine. Our tribes, angered by their lifestyle and land demand, we attacked and killed them. But when the English ship returned to give supplies to the settlers, no colonists were found.
Roanoke was called the Lost Island, due to the fact that all were lost and there was no clue how they all died. We just assumed it was the Indians annoyed by their presence. Funded by Queen Elizabeth I, it was led by Sir Walter Raleigh and his half-brother. His half-brother financed and advised the colony, although he later drowned, in which Queen Elizabeth I granted the responsibility to Sir Walter Raleigh.
Later they returned and had another funded settlement by King Charles II. Taking our land at Albemarle Sound in the 1650s, this was the first permanent settlement. In 1663, King Charles II of England granted land to a group of English proprietors for the colony of Carolina. By 1700, only 4,000 freeholders lived in the northern part of the colony, where they used the labor of indentured servants and Africans, and many people as slaves to raise livestock, which they then sold to the West Indies. The first town, Bath, was incorporated in 1705. North Carolina and South Carolina became separate colonies in 1712, and that same year the English colonists of North Carolina were embroiled in a war with my people, the Tuscarora Indians. The colonists defeated us in 1713, and the survivors of my tribe moved north to join the Iroquois Confederacy.
The introduction of rice growing came to the English in 1690. Englishmen had mostly been selling livestock and food such as corn as their main cash crop. Rice was introduced by the Africans the English had enslaved. Africans knew how to grow rice due to their ancestors, who had been growing it since the 1500s. Rice became the main source of income for the colony. Native Americans were soon no longer needed because they did not know how to harvest rice. Many of them began dying of diseases as well. However, this caused a major problem that would change life for many poor settlers.
Large pieces of land were needed in order to grow rice, which in turn forced poor settlers to move off of the land and go elsewhere. Because the majority of the good land is in the south, this is where the rice was grown and where the poor were forced out of. These poor settlers headed to the northern part of the colony, where the land was not well enough for rice. Instead, they began raising livestock and growing tobacco for profit. They also produced timber products from pine forests, which as well became a nice source of income for them. This is what sparked the split between the colony of Carolina into what is now known as North Carolina and South Carolina. From then on, Northerners raised tobacco, sold furs, and wood for naval supplies, while Southerners' income greatly revolved around rice as well as indigo and silk.
North Carolina came under direct royal rule in 1729, ending the private ownership of proprietors. North and South Carolina separated in 1712, but not official on document until 1729. In 1521, Gardenia explored the coastline of South Carolina, then going further south towards southern parts of North America and Central America. South Carolina was first founded by Spain in 1526 with Spaniard Lucas Vasquez, but due to issues with the Native Americans and lack of gold, they headed deeper south towards Florida. King Charles II ordered Englishmen Charlestown to quickly move south and settle in South Carolina, establishing the settlement of Charlestown. Charlestown became a thriving civilization that used indentured servants and slaves to harvest their land. After serving their time as indentured servants, they were given poor land on the outskirts of town to live on their own. They headed back up north, where they were offered better protection and stability due to the fact North Carolina was established by the English earlier. There they grew tobacco, which grew rapidly and increased.
The Carolinas welcomed whites, Puritans, and other English and Dutch settlers. They used and discriminated my people and African Americans, using them for strenuous labor and the exploration for gold.
As early as 1665, North Carolinians disliked taxes, and they especially hated the abuse of power and mismanagement of revenue. A main concern for colonists was the quit-rate, basically land tax. North Carolinians' irritation with the quit-rate was heightened. During the early 1700s, when the new provincial government tried collecting back taxes, and assembly and royal officials debated the proper role of the government and the quit-rate. The quit-rate system and the sale of land in the proprietary caused many problems, including disagreements among proprietors, governments, and assemblies and denizens. The proprietors, for instance, wanted quit-rates paid in sterling, but many Tar Heels could only pay with marketable commodities. North Carolinians' irritation at the quit-rate intensified under administration of the first royal governor, George Burrington, an enemy of proprietors and ironically a former friend of
In 1521, Spaniard Francisco Gordillo explored the Carolina coast. Lucas Vasquez tried to establish a colony near the Winyah Bay region 5 years later, but due to disease, the colony failed. France attempted settlements in South Carolina as well, but they also failed. England began settlement of the Americans during the 1600s. In 1670, the first permanent European settlement of South Carolina was established at Albemarle Point. In 1680, the settlement was moved to Oyster Point and renamed Charlestown. Several battles were fought during the early 1700s. Colonists received little help from England, but rallied together to defeat French and Spanish troops. They were also victorious against Indian attacks and the pirates that raided the ships along the coast until 1718.
Where are we? Oh my gosh! We're not in my room anymore. Press pause.
How do you press pause?
Dingus. Hello?
Hey, it's King Charles.
Charles. You can't laugh. You can't laugh. Okay, ready? Come on, it was so good. That was so good. Okay, ready? We'll make it better. Hello?
Yeah, it's King Charles.
Who are you?
Well, I'm Sir Walter Rowland.
Into a new world. They arrived in Roanoke, an island all. I hate you! King Charles. I can't do it. Alright, fine.
England granted land to a group of English proprietors.
What? Yo, I'm doing this so good.
I'm not even doing anything.
I know what you're making.
Began dying of diseases as.
What
was that?
that?
Maddie!